Let me show you the same phenomenon in the dimension of space instead of the dimension of time. Let's ask, how big is the sun? Are we going to define the sun as limited by the extent of its fire? That's one possible definition. But we could equally well define the sphere of the sun by the extent of its heat. We could also define the sphere of the sun by the extent of its light. And each of these would be reasonable choices, except that it's rather difficult to keep track of the extent of its light because we're inside it. And therefore we have arbitrarily agreed to define the sun by the limit of its visible fire. But you will see in all these, by these analogies, that how big a thing is, or how long an event is simply a matter of definition. Now therefore, when by simple definition, for purposes of discussion, we have divided events into certain periods, we'll say the First World War began in 1914 and it ended in 1918. Now actually, all those things which led up to the First World War started long before 1914. And the repercussions of that war have continued long beyond 1918. How are we to distinguish an event from its repercussions? So you will see that because we have divided events from one another in this arbitrary way, we do that, and then we sort of forget we did it. And then we have a puzzle. How do events lead to each other? Because you see, in reality, there are no separate events. Life moves along like water. And it's all connected as the source of a river is connected to the mouth and to the ocean. And all the events or things going on are like whirlpools in the stream. Because you go there today and you see a whirlpool. You go there tomorrow and you see a whirlpool. But it isn't the same whirlpool because all the water is changing every second. What is happening is not really what we should call a whirlpool, but rather a whirlpooling. It is an activity, not a thing. And indeed, every so-called thing can be called an event. We call, say, a house, housing. We call a mat, matting. And we could equally call a cat, a catting. So we could say the catting sat on the matting. And we would thereby have a world in which there were no things but only events. To give another illustration, a flame is something we say, there is a flame on the candle. But it would be more correct to say, there is a flaming on the candle, because the flame is a stream of hot gas. Let's take another amusing example. We say fist, and fist is a noun. And fist looks like a thing, but suddenly what happens to the fist when I open my hand? See, I was fisting. Now I'm handing it. So every kind of so-called thing can be spoken of as an event, and because events flow into each other, the fisting flows into the hand, we cannot say exactly where one ends and the other begins. So therefore, if we remember that, we shall see that we do not need the idea of causality to explain how a prior event influences a following event, because it's like this. Supposing I'm looking through a narrow slit in a fence, and a snake goes by. I've never seen a snake before, and this is mysterious. And I see through the slit in the fence, first the snake's head, then I see a long, trailing body, and then finally the tail. I said, well, that was interesting. Then the snake turns round and goes back. And again, I see first the head, and then after an interval, the tail. Now, if I call the head one event and the tail another, it will seem to me that the event head is the cause of the event tail. And the tail is the effect.
Brutal.
But if I look at the whole snake, I will see a head-tailed snake, and it would be simply absurd to say that the head of the snake is the cause of the tail, as if the snake came into being, first the head and then the tail. The snake comes into being out of its egg as a head-tailed snake. And so in exactly the same way, all events are really one event. We're looking, when we talk about different events, we're looking at different sections or parts of one continuous happening. And therefore, the idea of separate events, which have to be linked by a mysterious process called cause and effect, is completely unnecessary. But having thought that way, we think of present events as being caused by past events. And therefore, we tend to regard ourselves as the puppets of the past, as driven along by something that is always behind us. Now, to overcome this impression, it's very simple. You begin again with an experiment which I suggested in a previous talk about meditation. Approach the world through your ears. If you shut your eyes and make contact with reality purely with your ears, I mean, it's kind of silly perhaps to shut your eyes when you're looking at television, but do it just for a moment. And you will realize that the sounds you are hearing are all coming out of silence. You hear